Hey, Craig, thanks for joining us today. I'm so excited to talk with you. I met Craig through ITN, Institute of Transformational Nutrition, and we ended up being in a mastermind together with some awesome people. That was a really fun time. But I've seen you travel the country with Bethany. I've seen when you were, working with Sean Stevenson, and I want to know, what are you up to right now?
My gosh. Yeah, we go way back, don't we?
Yeah.
It's been a lot. I mean, that's how many years ago? Probably 6 or 7 years ago at this point, 2018 or 2019. Um, yeah, I mean, life has been crazy. I mean, even just this past year alone, I got engaged, married, and now we're getting ready to have a baby. So it's pretty
So
cool. So, but yeah, I mean, we met through ITN, which is an awesome coaching, institution. You learn so much incredible information, and you meet so many cool people like yourself. And then, so I did work for Sean Stevenson, who has a great podcast, The Model Health Show. I worked for him as like his nutritionist inside his social media accounts for 4 years. And then in 2022, January 22, I transitioned to working for Ancestral Supplements, so a beef organ supplement company where I'm their head of education, and I do cool interviews like this. I get to meet I get to meet more cool people and run some of their social accounts. So it's a pretty cool time.
that is cool. You're doing a lot. It's cool to watch you grow. You have posted so much content and stayed so consistent. So it's really cool to see. Are you loving being with Ancestral Supplements? I'm sure you are. You've been there for a while.
Yeah, 3 years today or yesterday. So it's been a crazy ride. Really awesome experience. I love the entire team there. Um, it's been, yeah, I mean, awesome. I just really enjoy it. I love the message that we preach. I love living the lifestyle, the ancestral, quote unquote, ancestral lifestyle, just healthy lifestyle in general. And I think it completely aligns with who I am.
Yeah, absolutely. You really do embody health, and I love seeing it. Um, if you guys don't follow him on Instagram or anything, like your house and everything in it is like the health conscious person's dream, right? Like you have everything from red lights, sauna. Um, Now, question: the red lights,
Yeah.
you only have red light or no? Because I
Uh,
know when you turn off, like it's nighttime, your whole house is red, right?
I mean, right now I'm under my studio lights, which are a bright white light, which I got to go outside, get some sun after this because even though it's cloudy out right now. But yeah, I mean, it took us probably a decade to get to where we're at now with, we're always evolving and growing with all the health knowledge that we're given. But yeah, we do red lights typically at night, and that's different than like therapeutic red light. Like you hear about the benefits of like near infrared and maybe targeted treatments that red light can have for skin issues or energy or hormones or testosterone, things like that. Whereas we like to also put red light on at night just to minimize the white bright blue lights, because that messes with your circadian rhythms and can mess up your sleep. So we do put the red lights on at night just as like a nice ambiance. It's funny because our in-laws are our next door neighbors, and they think we're part of the red light district. Our house is glowing red. They make fun of us, but it helps our sleep. So we've been rocking that for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years now, doing a lot of different red light stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, it is overwhelming, right? When you think of first getting into it and start, taking out things that are toxic in your home. And I know for me, it was like, what do you start with? So what did you guys start with? And what would you, like, looking back, recommend for someone making the transition to a
Wow.
non-toxic home?
Yeah, that's that for me. I mean, it started, because um, I grew up as an athlete, and I really got interested in health about 2015. I was in college my freshman year. I was an athlete, had a nutrition class, really loved it, decided to major in nutrition at Penn State. But my uncle, he passed away in 2015 from a heart attack. He was 43 years old, and just, it was out of nowhere. He wasn't seemingly unhealthy. And so that sparked something inside me to want to learn more and to really just dive deeper into the health space and learn as much as I can about nutrition and everything health, right? All the pillars of health, sleep and movement and toxins and all that. And so I think for me, it started with nutrition because that was like the direct thing that I noticed right away that made an impact on my performance in my athletic endeavors. But after that, it just snowballed into learning about how to move my body better, how to optimize my sleep, how to, remove some of these toxins that, are in our home that we don't really know about. I mean, we can talk about the chemicals in dishware, like the cookware, all that sort of stuff. But really, it started with the nutrition, and then one thing led to another, and just trying to remove all that stuff. So if anybody's listening, just start with what you know now, and just continue to grow and improve, and go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Do you want to talk about why like cookware is so toxic for like nonstick?
Yeah, so back in, I want to say it was the 50s or 60s, Teflon, right? We've all heard of Teflon coated pans. This is a chemical that was made for tanks and like army tanks. It was like a protective coating that made it water resistant, so the water would slick off. And some businessman had the bright idea of putting that in pots and pans and cookware. And when that scratches and when that goes into your system, that's a major endocrine disruptor. And this company, these businessmen and women, they were knowingly putting this into cookware, and not just cookware, but it was in carpets, furniture, clothes, really anything you could think of. And they were running tests, and it was literally giving people cancer, humans cancer, and they were throwing it under the rug. They were just dirtying the waters, funding corrupt science, showing that it wasn't bad, but it actually was. And now it's still allowed in our products. Literally, you could find mattresses, anything you could really think of in your home. Teflon could be in there, and it's known as a forever chemical. So all these chemicals, it's in our tap water, and this isn't some conspiracy. This is legit science that has been backed up, shown time and time again, and that's why it's a major problem. So once we learn these things, we're like, I'm being poisoned in everything that we do. So how can we start to minimize this? And it's not to be afraid of this. It's not to be scared. It's just to become aware and educated, and then learn how can we make small improvements day after day.
Absolutely. It's kind of crazy when you think of what is allowed, right? In everything, in our food and our water. Why do you think that it is this way, right? That so much toxins are allowed in our everyday
Mm.
life?
This is a good question. And I mean, this could go back to 100 years ago. Uh, I mean, these conveniences, I've talked about conveniences and comfort, making things more convenient, just drive-throughs, or just trying to invent things that, take the toughness out of our lives, make things easier. But it's the same conveniences that also come at a cost. And I think we can really just start getting into the weeds of inventing things and putting these chemicals. I mean, tens of thousands of new chemicals are put into our environment every year. It's not tightly regulated to a certain extent. There's a lot of good organizations like the Environmental Working Group that are putting out a lot of good content showing what chemicals are coming through our tap water and into our environment. And they have a good resources that can show you exactly, what chemicals can do, how they're associated or known to be causal of certain issues like cancer or autoimmune conditions. And you can check out some of their cool apps, but it really it's not tightly regulated, and it's just in a lot of our products. And companies can make higher profit margins because they're putting a lot of these chemicals not only in their food but other products, and it's cheaper to make, and it's legal to do. It's the crazy thing.
Yeah, it's sick
It
what's
is.
allowed here. And then you think of other countries, right? They're much healthier. We're probably ranking lowest, right, in
Yeah.
health.
Yeah, it's pretty poor. I mean, but we have the highest expenditure in healthcare. I mean, we're spending like $4 trillion a year just in healthcare costs, but we have one of the lowest, if not the lowest, health. We have very, very poor health in our society. I mean, what is it? 60% of individuals in the United States are on 2 or more medications. 40% are on, I think, 3 or more. It just came out like 75% of people are overweight or obese. Almost half of people are obese. So it's a problem, and people don't know some of this information, and we're being directly lied to or manipulated in some of this food marketing, and then commercials. All this stuff with Red 40 coming out in the FDA. It's like finally starting to catch hold a little bit, thankfully, but it's been far too long. For decades, it's been a mess.
Yeah. Do you have any like hope with RFK coming in?
I do. I think there's going to be a lot of hurdles. I think people, companies, big pharma, big food is going to make it really difficult for this organization coming in. But I do have hope, and I think the more people step up and start talking about this and just putting out good science-backed information and coming together, the more hope we'll have, and we'll start to see these things. I mean, Red 40 is just one tiny example of just the effects of getting him into, government, and because he's all about trying to get these corrupt individuals and corrupt companies and hold them accountable. I mean, we could talk about the vaccines and what he's been doing there. Because I wouldn't say that he's like people like to label him as an anti-vaxxer, but he's really just calling out like, hey, these are not as safe as we thought. And how can we just hold them to the same level of accountability as other drug companies? Because the vaccine industry, not to go too much on a tangent here, but the vaccine industry is one of the only drug industries where they are not held accountable at all. Other drug companies can be held more accountable, but bad things can happen, adverse side effects can happen, and these vaccine companies are not held accountable. So he's, hopefully he can come in there and this organization can do a good job.
Yeah, it would be nice. And it is crazy to think that something can be held so unaccountable, considering, I mean, I've read countless articles and stories and even, friends that have had children with vaccine injuries, or even knowing people that have had COVID vaccine and they're suffering greatly. So, what is your thought on the COVID vaccine? And then obviously you guys are getting ready to have a baby.
Yeah.
What is your thought going forward on that?
Yeah, I mean, to each their own. But I think there's a lot of, as we've seen in the past couple years after it all, kind of the dust settled of COVID, and we've really seen how, was it the Washington Post came out and said like the vaccine wasn't as effective as we thought. And like like, I know there's people that thought it was very effective, but there was literally health professionals out there talking about how this isn't effective. There's a lot of side effects, and we were being silenced. Like Meta, Mark Zuckerberg came out and said that the Biden administration literally forced their hand to silence and mute a lot of these health professionals talking about the very real side effects of this. But it really manipulated the perception on the media. You have friends and family that watch the media and they're seeing just this one-sided story, and it's not the entire truth. And when the truth is being silenced, that's all they're gonna know is this fairy tale world that the vaccine was more effective than it actually was. But I mean, there's a lot of fear mongering going on in the news, and it's crazy. I mean, just to kind of put that into perspective, like I think, and obviously every death matters, but there was like 1 to 2 million deaths in the first year, and I'll put deaths in quotations, of COVID, because a lot of the deaths were labeled, like if somebody died in a motorcycle accident and they tested positive for COVID, they would be labeled as a COVID death when it was really the motorcycle accident, right? And that happened a lot. And I think there was something along the lines of like 1 to 2 million deaths from COVID the first year. Well, to put that into perspective, I mean, we're having almost 1,750,000 heart disease deaths every single year, and it's been happening for decades. I mean, where is the urgency for that? Nobody's having the urgency to stop heart disease, cardiovascular disease, stroke. So there's no urgency there. And poor food. There's a study published in, I want to say it was the European Heart Journal, one of the top medical journals, found that poor food is responsible for over 11 million deaths every single year. Food alone, not just heart disease. I'm talking about food-related deaths. Over 11 million deaths every single year. There's no urgency to change this by many people in government agencies, because this isn't getting conspiratorial, but a lot of people in government are making money from big food companies, and it's ridiculous. They're making money off of statin drugs. I put out a couple videos on my own platform talking about how corrupt the statin industry is and how big pharma can manipulate all these studies to show that statins are maybe a little bit more effective, and how doctors are profiting. It's kind of wild, but yeah.
Yeah, that's a loaded answer. I love all of that. Thank you. Now, for you personally, when would you go see someone in the Western medical field? Do you think that there's more to be done naturally
Mm,
than, I don't know, chemo or
yeah.
things that they're prescribing for, I don't anything, autoimmune disease, MS. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and as much as I've said so far, I mean, I love Western medicine to a certain extent. I mean, of course, like if you get some sort of infection, if you get a broken bone, if something acute, like an acute injury happens to you, that's incredible. Like you can literally save lives. You get into a car accident, you can save a person's life because of the surgeries, the technology that we have today. But when it comes to preventative measures of chronic diseases, nutrition, sleep management, like helping chronic diseases, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, all these major Alzheimer's, like all these major chronic diseases that people are struggling with today, uh, our Western medicine is doing terrible at it because they're just taught to give a drug and then how to treat symptoms. They're not taught to, hey, this food that you're eating is literally causing your symptoms or it's exacerbating your symptoms. They're not taught that. They're just taught to give a drug that can suppress symptoms. But symptoms are a manifestation, like something is going on. How can we change some things in your lifestyle to reduce that? So yeah, I'll go to Western medicine, and if a major event happens, God forbid. Uh, but yeah, there's also a lot that for hundreds, I mean, we'll go like there's documented history, thousands of years of, Hippocrates has even said, I mean, using herbs as medicine and using food as medicine, this has all been documented for thousands of years, and it's still used today in many different cultures, using food as medicine, herbs as medicine. But it's largely been silenced by big pharma industry. And you can go back to the Flexner report back in the early 1900s, and all that sort of stuff being silenced. Natural medicine has. But I mean, there's a lot that just living in tune with nature can help you. Getting a little bit of sun every day, eating a whole food based diet, getting some good sleep, not stressing, doing a lot of these things can not only help, we see it every day, it can help people live healthier, but it can prevent a lot of these issues from occurring.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. What is the most surprisingly toxic thing
Mm.
that you think are like in our everyday life?
Maybe air quality. I mean, we're eating a couple pounds of food every day. We are drinking, say 100 ounces if we're good of water every day, or 80 ounces of water a day. But we're literally breathing in how much air? Every breath you're taking, you're breathing in gallons and gallons of air every single day. It's, you can only go, 3 minutes without air, or 3 weeks without food, or 3 days without water. I would say air pollution is one of the most toxic things. And I think it's on the forefront of everybody's minds right now because of the LA wildfires, but not just because of wildfire smoke, but just the pollution in general. I mean, if somebody's living in a neighborhood or a city and somebody is your neighbor is repairing a drywall, or you're, doing a home renovation, a lot of that can come into your own home. And I mean, live in a home, it's like a giant Tupperware box, especially right now in winter, all of our windows are closed. It's tough to kind of get that open, but if you can turn on, like if you're cooking your food, and I notice I have a couple air purifiers here, and I'm cooking food, within minutes, my air purifiers are going off, kicking into high gear, because all those carcinogenic compounds are cooking from my food. And if I don't have any windows open, that's all staying in my home, and we're just breathing that in. Because if you don't have an air purifier, or you're not opening up your windows, then your lungs are the purifier, and that's not cool. So I would say that air quality, when we really learned about how toxic air pollution can be, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, that's when we started investing in some of these air purifiers and just making sure we're opening up windows every day, or try to, not this time of year because you can't really open up windows in 10-degree weather. So that's why I think it's important to have an air purifier. But yeah, when we really learned about that, I was like, we need to just make sure our air quality is doing pretty good.
Yeah, I love that. And would you say that having air purification in your home just kind of like takes the stress off of your body to work so hard? I mean, me and my husband kind of just chat back and forth and have like,
Yeah.
different thoughts of things, right? So he mentioned, well, what if like having the air purifier is not helpful because then you're getting, like we need certain things
Mm.
to help our immune system, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think That's a really interesting point to bring up because it's kind of like the dose makes the poison, and what doesn't harm you, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger kind of point. But these little daily hitters and micro doses of these toxins, like we're talking about the Teflon earlier, and women put on like over 170 chemicals in their makeup every day. It's like these little daily hitters can be small endocrine disruptors. I don't know if there's any evidence out there saying like, hey, a little hit of arsenic, every so often is going to make you stronger. I don't know if we have the data on that, but yeah, I just know like if I can go outside, get some high quality air, that's what my biology expects. And I don't want to be constantly breathing in, carcinogenic compounds from the food that I'm cooking, because naturally our ancestors would have been cooking outside. We wouldn't have been in box containers like we are in our homes. And a lot of these chemicals, one, they wouldn't have been invented, but a lot of these chemicals would just be in the environment. They wouldn't be just ruminating in our homes. So I'm under the impression like I just want to have good clean air as close to nature as I can get. And if I can't get some windows open, and if I live in a city and I have maybe other toxic chemicals coming in from other people's homes, which is quite common, or like the off gassing of cars, the pollutants coming from cars coming into your home, having an air purifier I think is a good thing.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I know too, just our air isn't always the best even outside. Have you ever looked into chemtrails or just things that makes or is there any truth to that?
I don't know. I haven't looked into chemtrails too much. All I know is that sometimes when I'm sitting in my living room, we have glass windows up above like our fireplace, and I just see a chemtrail. There goes a plane right by, and it's dropping a chemtrail right there. And I'm like, I don't know, because are some states illegal to have that? You can't drop chemtrails there?
Not sure. I haven't heard that.
I'm not sure if you can do it in every state, but I'm in Pennsylvania and I see chemtrails. I could go out there right now and I'd probably see a couple. I haven't looked into it too much, but I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to know that putting chemicals and off gassing all that into our environment isn't gonna, add up to something big.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there any fun recent research that you're into right now that's new?
Oh my goodness, that's a good question. I don't think I've ever been asked that before. I've been studying colostrum lately, and I think that's a cool little supplement, but food that humans have been doing for a while. And I just like researching colostrum and all things that, because colostrum, if anybody doesn't know, it's the first milk that all mammals produce in the first few days after birth. Human moms or cows or bison, or all produced in the first few days after birth. And it's really immunologically active. So it's going to have a ton of cofactors in there that are incredible for building up the immune system. Can really help a baby or a calf grow, rapidly in the first few weeks alone. And there's a lot of good science showing that, one, it's been used historically for a couple thousand years by adults, not just infants, but adults. But more recently, in the past couple decades, there's been a lot of cool science showing that why humans have been using it for at least a few thousand years. It's good for athletic performance. It can help athletic recovery, helps digestive issues, a lot of things like that. So I've kind of been going down a big rabbit hole of colostrum lately.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. I know when I was researching some colostrum, but it was along with breast milk that NFL players like sometimes buy breast milk because it helps them or something, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah. It's been cool. I put out some content on our YouTube channel, just talking all about the benefits, and it's been, if anybody hasn't checked it out, just look into it just a little bit and you'll see like this whole food is so incredibly potent, like how much nature can just really help. Like the randomized controlled trials on it is just extensive. It's really cool. And not to mention another form of dairy, kefir or kefir, however people want to say it. I say it one way and people are like, you should say it the other way. I was like, I can't win. But that's a really cool rabbit hole that I've gone down, just studying about pasteurization, raw dairy, and kefir. We could talk about that, but that's a whole rabbit hole in and of itself.
No, I do want to go into that because I wanted to ask you, why can some people handle raw milk, but they cannot handle, mainstream milk that you buy at the supermarket?
there's a few different reasons. And if anybody's coming into this thinking, raw milk is crazy dangerous, I've been drinking it 9 years, almost 10 years now. And more in the past 5 years, I've been doing about 2 gallons a week in the form of just raw milk and then raw kefir, which is fermented raw milk. And then I've also been doing a couple pounds of raw yogurts. So 5 years, I've never once had an issue. Either I'm incredibly lucky or there's something off about the media saying how dangerous it is. So just for example, I'll talk about why people can handle that raw dairy a little bit better. But my own farm that I go to here in Pennsylvania, they are a part of something called the Raw Milk Institute. And you go to rawmilkinstitute.org, and there's a couple dozen farms that are a part of Raw Milk Institute across the country. And so by law, pasteurized milk, people think pasteurized milk is completely safe. Like there's no downsides to it. It kills off all the bacteria. Well, by law, pasteurized milk in the grocery store can have up to 10 coliform CFUs per milliliter. That's E. coli, salmonella. It can have some in it. It can also have up to 100,000 SPC. That's standard plate count. So if you've ever seen a Petri dish and it has all the bacteria in there, it can have up to 100,000 SPC CFUs per milliliter. So it can have some bacteria in it. My farm that I go to here that sells raw dairy, they make sure that they have all the clean standards. They can have you walk through, everybody going there. And then they also test every single week their small batches of raw milk that they're selling. Well, most every week they have 0 coliform CFUs per milliliter, not up to 10, it's 0. And then they have less than 5,000 SBC CFUs per milliliter. So in a lot of ways, I mean, they hold themselves to a higher standard. And you can literally compare the two, the pasteurized milk in the grocery store, which is often coming from insanitary, dirty feedlot cows that, they're not handling it as carefully as they would a raw farm, a good quality raw farm, because they know that they're going to pasteurize that anyway. Well, the raw farm that I go to here in a lot of ways is up over 10 times safer than the pasteurized dairy in the grocery store. So what's the harm? Why would I consume raw dairy over the pasteurized dairy? Well, a lot of people don't do well with pasteurized dairy. When I grew up, I didn't handle pasteurized dairy that well, ultra pasteurized dairy. I had acne, I got digestive issues, gas, bloated, the whole thing. Well, when I was in my late teens, early 20s, when I really started kind of diving into my health journey that I was talking about earlier, I cut out all dairy altogether. And for a good 6 or 7 years. And I've found a good improvement. Like I switched to plant-based milks, almond milks, and there's some good quality almond milks out there. But I'm a fan of raw dairy more than that because I'll talk about why. But when I cut that out for 6 or 7 years, I saw improvements. But then I started going to my farmer's market. Being here in Pennsylvania, you can get raw dairy at health food shops. You can get it at farmer's markets. It's really quite legal here. And I was like, wow, I don't react to this. I was doing a gallon a week, some yogurts, and I didn't react to it. I didn't have the issues. And that led me down to some rabbit holes trying to figure out why I handled this better. And so really it comes down to the processing of a food. And when you heat dairy, milk up over, there's different levels of pasteurization. If you're heating dairy up to about 145 degrees Fahrenheit for maybe 20 minutes, that's called a low temp or a vat pasteurization. That doesn't necessarily denature a ton of, it does denature some of the proteins and it does get rid of some of the enzymes. But when you're really ultra pasteurizing a milk, you're flash heating it over 200 degrees for just a few seconds, you're killing off all the enzymes in there. You're denaturing a lot of the proteins and a lot of the cofactors. Well, in order to digest that dairy properly, you need to have the enzymes, you need to have the good probiotics in there, and you can digest that milk a lot better. But if you're just killing off everything in there, it's going to be a lot harder to digest because over about 60 to 70% of our worldwide population is lactose intolerant. And people will give me the reason that is a direct sign that humans aren't meant to consume dairy in general. They'll say, you're lactose intolerant. That's a sign that you're not supposed to consume dairy after, a few years old because we lose the enzyme lactase that digests lactose. Well, historically, humans, 60 to 70% lose the lactase enzyme. But that means like 30 to 40% actually still contain the lactase enzyme, which is weird. Like we contain that lactase enzyme into adulthood. Why do we do that? Well, because these are more European humans, cultures that usually, like Irish, I'm Irish. Uh, a lot of Irish individuals still have the lactase enzyme because that culture has been consuming dairy for thousands upon thousands of years. Well, it just makes sense that they would, or some other cultures don't. But yeah, I lost my train of thought there.
You're fine. You're fine. I love it. And I love seeing your hauls for the raw dairy. I'm in Virginia, so it's illegal here
Yeah.
to like sell raw dairy or anything. So I have a co-op, and I think it's Rocky Ridge Dairy. I'm pretty sure it's in Pennsylvania, but I have to drive like 20 minutes to a co-op to go grab it. But it's nice to have that option. And I do notice that I feel better drinking it than store stuff.
Yeah, and I will say that one way to actually make, if you are concerned about drinking raw dairy, raw milk, one way to actually make it safer that our ancestors have been doing for thousands of years is fermenting it into kefir. Because people think pasteurized milk, you kill off everything. It's completely dead food. There's nothing living in there. And by the way, you're still drinking all that dead bacteria. The bacteria don't go anywhere. It's just a lot of dead bacteria in there. Whereas if you have the milk and you ferment it into kefir, which is super simple, I do it every week. You just add a little bit of kefir grains, which are little sacks of probiotics. You pour that raw milk in a jar and let it sit at room temperature for about 24 hours. And it'll create this yogurt-like consistency. And it's a little tart. It's a little bit more potent than yogurt. It's a little sour. But that's actually a way to make the milk safer. And what happens is when you're fermenting that milk, you're creating a slightly acidic environment, because neutral is like pH of 7 is neutral. And that's where milk, that's where water sits. And that's a good place for bacteria to thrive. And even pathogenic bad bacteria can live there. Well, if you're fermenting a food, cheese or yogurt or sourdough or kefir down to about 5 to 4 pH, bad bacteria, pathogenic bacteria can't live in that environment. And so only the good probiotics that are going to nourish your gut flourish in that environment. And so if anybody is worried about raw milk and still wants the benefits, ferment it into kefir. It creates over 60 different strains of probiotics, which is better than any probiotic supplement on the market. You drink that, and the science on that, just like colostrum, the science on kefir is incredible. I mean, the randomized controlled trial after study is just coming out showing that it can help with so many different issues.
That's so good. So good. But for someone with histamine issues, don't these things kind of mess with them? Do you know why people suffer with histamine issues? Like, what's the root of that?
There's a few different theories out there. It is tricky because fermented foods and a few other different types of foods can trigger histamine reactions. But I know that you can include certain foods that contain DAO. This is diamine oxidase. This helps to lessen your production of histamine in your body. So, for example, beef kidney is one supplement or food. It's really a food, but you can get it as a supplement, like desiccated, freeze-dried supplement. This contains DAO, and you can take that, and it can actually lessen your histamine response to certain foods. But yeah, if anybody is out there, sensitive to histamine producing foods, fermented foods, then, or like bone broth, even foods like that can trigger some histamine issues.
Okay, well, that's cool about the DAO. Now, would they take that whenever, or like with, so let's say if I was having a fermented food, would I take that with the fermented food, or?
You can, but I would make it more of like a regular thing, so it kind of builds up in your system over time. Take it for a few days or a few weeks and see if it improves. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. I know I've experienced some histamine issues. I'm over it now, but I have a friend that she's really struggling right now, where she, is having the healthier foods and it's triggering symptoms. So it's cool to have like knowledge like that to be able to kind of help reverse it and make it easier.
Yeah, it's definitely, helped a lot of people. DAO, diamine oxidase, you can go down a rabbit hole and search that, but it's definitely a good, you can get that as its own supplement, but I'm a fan of getting it in whole food form. Like kidney is one of the best sources of DAO.
Awesome. I want to talk about water a little bit.
Yeah,
I know you have all the reverse osmosis, correct?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. I saw something on Blue Land today. They posted that if you're drinking bottled water, you are basically eating 52 credit cards a year, ingesting one coat hanger, one
Mm.
entire pen, a cap a month, and two medium combs a year. I don't know the truth to that, but is there any way to um avoid drinking from bottled water? And I know for me, like there's no springs by us. I'm on the
Hmm.
flatlands, and you sent the website to me before, right?
Find
To
a
find a
spring.
spring. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, full context. I mean, when I learned about tap water, this is back in 2014, I immediately started trying to bottle my own springs because being in PA, there's a plethora of springs. I have maybe two in driving distance here. And when I lived at my other place, I had a couple in driving distance. So, in 2014, I just started going and collecting my own spring water, and it's on the website called Find a Spring. And this was early in Find a Spring's website. There was only a handful of springs listed on there at the time, but I, word of mouth, started talking to people at my health food store, and for about 6 years, until 2019, that's all we drank. My then girlfriend, now wife, we drank spring water. We would drive up the mountain with my dog Coda every other Saturday. We would take big 5-gallon glass jugs. We had four of them, and so that was 20 gallons. And I'd fill up a spring. You could see like it coming right out of the spout, and you just fill them up and you drive back down the mountain. And that's the water that we drank. We used for coffee. We even watered our plants with it. It lasted us 2 weeks, and that's what we drank. And I even had that tested. I sent it out to this company in California that tested it, compared it to my tap water. It was a night and day difference of everything in there. And I was mind blown. I was like, that's the water we drank. We loved it. Well, then we moved to North Carolina and then to Texas, but now we're back in PA. But over the 4 years that we moved to North Carolina and Texas, there were no springs. And we're like, what are we going to do? So that's when I started doing research into water purification systems. And now we have RO systems. And if anybody doesn't have access to go get a spring, go get spring water, that's the first best thing that I would say to do, is to get living spring water that's full of good minerals. Then maybe well water would be the next best thing. If it's not too hard, it can be too mineralized at times. Then I would say get a good RO system. It's going to remove just about everything. Just add a couple little trace mineral drops back into it and make the water nice and hydrating.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you add minerals back in.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with plastic, is there plastic pieces in your RO system? Now, does that, like, you know what I mean? Because when we're talking about plastic from a bottle, and then there's still plastics, is one left? I mean, it has to be
Yeah.
less toxic than the other, right?
Yeah, so I've dabbled with 3 or 4 different RO systems over the years, and the one that I have now has a glass pitcher, and so the water is sitting in that glass pitcher, which is really nice. The back of it is plastic, but then that's being filtered through, and it's sitting in the glass pitcher, which I really enjoy. But the plastic that it is sitting in the back container is it's called like a Triton plastic. It's the same type of plastic that you'll find in like a Vitamix. It has free of BPA, BPF, BPSs, phthalates, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I like having it sit in the glass container there. So I'm not too concerned about that. I mean, I always say I don't want perfect, let perfect be the enemy of good, So uh, do the best you can do with what you got. But yeah, plastics are everywhere. I was at a point when we were doing the whole spring water thing. I was traveling with these jugs. I put them in little growlers, like gallon glass growlers. If I traveled to my in-laws' house, I would set them there on their floor, like 6 of them. And that's the water I drank. I wouldn't drink out of the fridge filter. I got really weird with it, and I think they just come to accept it. I'm a little bit more lenient now. I mean, if I'm in a pinch and I need to drink out of a plastic water bottle, I still will. But that's few and far between for me. And I think it's just so important to control what you can in your home, and make your home as non-toxic, if you will, as you can, because that's the place you're spending 90% of your time. So that's what we do.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that I was there too, where I was like really strict on everything. And it sometimes becomes a point to be too much, And one
Yeah.
of my pregnancies, I was like, all right, we're going to chill just a little bit,
Yeah.
And what do you say about the mind? Our mind is so powerful. I know Bruce Lipton and
Mhm.
Joe Dispenza. And at what point is like, are we too much focused on, all these little things where we need to really pay attention to our thoughts and how our thoughts can create health in our body.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, we can try and, optimize everything in our outer world as much as we can, but if you're not spending the same time and attention on optimizing the thoughts, because you have over 60,000 thoughts a day, and if you're not optimizing that, you could think the same thoughts every single day, and then you apply these limiting beliefs to yourself as to why you can't do something. But if you can take just a little bit of time and intention and really just take time for yourself every day, meditate, however that looks to you. It could be reading a book or just sitting there in your red light 5-10 minutes and just get your mind right, like thinking positive thoughts, affirmations. It can make a world of difference in your outlook on the rest of the world. But yeah, that's the number one thing is optimizing mindset. And that's the number one thing that's helped me over the years is having, I'm maybe too positive at times. Bethany helps to balance me out a little bit. She's more of a realist and I'm more of the optimist on hard situations. And it's actually probably to the point where it's a little bit annoying because I'm that guy that's like, hey, this bad thing happened, but hey, look at all this good stuff that happened. And it's kind of annoying at times, but she helps balances me out with that realism at times because she's like, there's real consequences for the things that happen. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, but again, like having that mindset of just having the optimism, if negative things come up, how can you see the good thing in that situation? That's kind of where my mind's at most of the time.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. What's your next level in health?
Next level in health. This year I want to put on more muscle mass. I really want to put on like 20 or 30 pounds of muscle, probably 20 pounds of muscle this year, and take on a more strength training regimen because my entire life has been more hit training, fast paced, sprints and things like that. So it's kept me relatively lean. But this year I want to do more bodybuilder style training, not for competition, just to put on more muscle, just to be able to train those muscle groups and get all the benefits that strength training has for the mind, the body, sleep benefits. Moving can really help sleep too. So that's the next level for me. So if I can come out of this year, 2025, with 20 more pounds of muscle, that'll be the next level for me.
I love that. Now, what do you need to change in order to get there?
I don't think I need to change a ton. I think it's just the structure of the workouts. Bethany, my wife, she's a certified personal trainer. So she designed me a good workout program. So I think it's just sticking to that, and following that and then pivoting and changing after a few months, seeing if, okay, this isn't working. How can we change that program around a little bit? But I think consistency, like most people, most things, consistency is just the thing that we lack. And if we can just stay consistent with our routines, that's a thing that can get us to help us achieve our goals. It's just consistency.
Yeah, you're 100% on there. I know for me, I tend to start strong and then so it's like, how do you move through that when things are, not going as optimally as you want?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've kind of always tried, I'll use the word try there, to live by the rule of, if you miss, it's okay to miss one workout because life comes up, things happen. But when you start letting yourself miss two, then it becomes a habit. And it's like, how can you prevent yourself from missing two workouts? Because say something comes up, something work related comes up one day and you have to miss your workout or you really can't fit it in. Something comes up with your kids. But then the next day, you kind of let that roll over into your next day and you start missing a workout just because you didn't feel like it or you prioritize social media scrolling or TV. It's like that's when habits start to form. So if maybe missing one is acceptable, but if you start missing two or three in a row, then you need to reevaluate and take a step back and say, why did I miss two or three? Was it because I was genuinely too busy? We all got the same 24 hours, the president of the United States, uh, myself, everybody in the world has the same 24. How can you learn to prioritize and prioritize what's important to you? Because that's really what it comes down to. And then just staying consistent. It doesn't have to be a lot. It doesn't have to be an hour workout program. Go for a 5 or 10 minute walk. Start where you're at with what you're doing and celebrate that as a win every day.
Yeah, 100%. What do you think people that are, I would say, average person that's not so healthy, right? Like they say habits create success. What are the habits that some people might be lacking that they can add in that would be, the 1%, what in Atomic Habits, James Clear talks about the 1%. If an airplane goes off direction 1%, your life is totally different. So
Wow.
what would that look like for someone?
Everybody's a little bit different. What I need, my habit might be different than what somebody else's habit needs. But I think we live in such a culture now where ultra processed foods is so prevalent, and then sedentary lives are so prevalent, and stress is so prevalent. It's this perfect storm of disease. So if we can just get a little bit better in each one of these areas, and I work at Ancestral Supplements, and what we have is called the 9 ancestral tenets. Each one of these tenets, or pillars, if you will, is a different pillar of health. Sleep, eat, move, shield yourself from toxins. Connect is like connecting to the earth. Sun, getting more sun. Cold, struggle, and bond. They're all these different pillars of health. So how can you look at each one of these pillars of your life and just see, take a step back, think a little bit, and just look. Sleep. How can I improve my sleep quality just like 1% today? It doesn't need to be extreme. You don't need to get the red lights. You don't need to go all out and remove your TV from your bedroom today. That's what I'd recommend in time. Get your cell phones out of your bedrooms, things like that. But just these little habits. Sleep. That's the thing that Bethany and I, we talked about the other day, is like, we think our relationship, one of the things that helps our relationship become so strong is we don't take our cell phones to bed. For 10 years, we've put our cell phones in our kitchen, plugged in on airplane mode, and we just go in, talk for 5-10 minutes, and fall asleep 9 o'clock every night ish. But I don't want to lay there and just scroll on social media when I'm trying to get good sleep. That's one of the best times that we can connect. So that's just one thing. And that might be hard to rip the Band-Aid off, but that's a great way. I think a lot of people can improve their sleep, because sometimes people will be like, I can't get great sleep. Well, are you laying on social media? Are you laying there staring into bright TV screens right before bed? Well, just maybe take a step back and just say, hey, how can we change that around a little bit? That might be one thing. And I think people need a little bit more sleep in their lives. So that can be a great way to start. Food. I mean, like I said, ultra processed foods make up over 60-70% of our total calories every single day. It's absurd. And these things impact our biology. They're easy to overeat. Scientists are literally making these so we overeat them. They make them hyper palatable. So how can you start sourcing a little bit more whole foods, both animal and plant sources? And over time, your palate will change. You'll learn to like these foods, not just stopping at the drive-through. It's going to be cheaper to actually make your own food at home. I think learning to cook is another great way. Now, not to overwhelm people, but just like small daily wins of getting 1% better every day. Movement, like just taking a walk. How can you don't got to start at 10,000. If you're at like 1,000, how can you get to 2,000? And just small daily wins like that. So over time, over the course of a year, then you'll see how your life, I mean, you're not 1% off or 10% off. You're starting to get a little bit more on track.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so good. Is it possible to be completely seed oil free?
That's such a good question. And I don't think so. I'm not completely seed oil free. Anybody that knows me knows I talk about seed oils on social media. And over the years, the past 10 years, I've probably done a really good job avoiding it most of the time. But the truth is, I mean, we're going to go out to eat. We're going to go to restaurants. And even if you ask the waiter or the cook, hey, can you cook this in butter? I did that at Texas Longhorn, and the butter is a mixture of canola oil and butter. And I was like, come on. So it's not to be perfect. It's not to beat yourself up. But in our world today, where 80% of our fat calories come from seed oils, I don't think it is possible to go completely seed oil free. Even some of these hunter-gatherer cultures like the Hadza and Maasai, somehow seed oils and corn and all these foods have found their way into their culture. It's kind of wild. So again, it's not to be perfect. It's just to be intentional and maybe ask certain questions and not stress over, food choices. If I go out to a family's house and they're making cookies, maybe I'll have some, maybe I won't, but I'm more intentional about it now. And if I want to say no, it's not an unhealthy habit of me. It's not an unhealthy mindset. I just truly don't want to have them. We don't bring them into our house. We want to create that structure here where we're not bringing unhealthy foods into our home. So that way, if we go out and we want to have it, we'll have it. But yeah, I don't think it is entirely possible to go seed oil free.
Yeah, absolutely. And what is your like in terms of going out to eat and stuff? Is it like an 80, 80% being home, 20% out? Like, do you have a
It used to be like 100%. Like I would be, I'd ask the waiter, the cook, like, hey, don't cook in this. I'd quiz them, But now I'm a little bit more lax with it and lenient with it. I just was, with my water, we talked about that. I was really strict with it. But now it's a little bit more laid back. And if I'm sometimes maybe I'll still have that strictness with it. I'll go out and I'll genuinely just be like, hey, can you not? Like, I'm just not feeling it right now. But other times I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'll take a little hit right now. But if I've been doing that a little too much, if I've been going out to eat with my family, maybe 3 or 4 times that month, yeah, I might be a little bit more intentional about it because I've already done it a lot. And I'm like, I'm starting to feel the effects of it, digestive issues or whatever. So yeah, I just think it's intentionality is the biggest thing.
Yeah, that's great. How important is it for you to be mindful of who you are around? I'm sure you have Bethany is a great person to accelerate your life, and I'm sure ancestral supplements, people you work with, they are. How has that benefited your life?
Just being like around the community aspect of things and around people that are like-minded.
Yeah.
That's everything. Cause I've seen firsthand how hard it can be when you surround yourself with people that aren't like-minded. I mean, you can surround yourself with people that don't, it can also be really hard if you're one spouse and you're trying to make changes, you're hearing all this and you're like, I want to start changing, but maybe your spouse doesn't want to. That is hard. And I'll acknowledge that is got to be hard for a lot of people. I'm grateful that, I've built a good, healthy life with my wife, who's a dietitian, and we learn together and we're doing our best to make the changes that we know. But yeah, I mean, who was it? Jim Rohn said, you're the average of the 5 closest people in your life, something like that. And it's so true because if you're not surrounding yourself and putting yourself in a community of people that want to elevate you and help you and believe in the same things that you believe, it's going to be really hard to make those changes because community is truly everything. So first, start in your own home and have a little grace with your spouse if they're not on the same page as you. But also try and join communities, try and find a gym, try and find online communities, do something because that's everything. And if you can start joining communities, you're going to be held more accountable. People are going to help to elevate you, rising tides raise all ships. So that's the number one thing is community for sure.
I love that. And I love how you spun into the relationship thing, because I can't tell you how many friends that I have that they want to be healthy, but their spouse has zero interest. And I'm so blessed that Chad has, the same interest. Like we're just kind of going. But what do you tell that person how to stay strong, right? Food is one of the hardest things, right? And just in general, being healthy, and if it's in the house, you're going to eat it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why it's a big thing. I mean, just sometimes you got to go cold turkey and not bring it into the house. Because here's the thing, you can create the structure in your own home. Society, when you leave your home, there is no structures, there is no standards in society. Literally, ultra processed foods are so easily accessible. You can find food on any street corner, ultra processed foods, seed oils, refined grains, added sugars, all these random man-made chemicals. There's no structure out there. Society's not creating that structure for us for a healthy, environment, healthy food. So if you're not creating that in your own home, then you're going to be exposed to all this all the time. So that's why we are so adamant about creating healthy structure in our home, not bringing in the seed oils, not bringing in all the random stuff. So that way, when we do go out, if we have it, it's a little bit, but we can always come back to what we like to think is a really healthy environment here at home. But yeah, it's tough if your spouse isn't on board. But there's a way, and I think having those meaningful conversations with each other, and I always think there's a healthier version of any food. If somebody's wanting to eat pizza or ice cream, there's a healthier version of that food. So just taking that little intentionality and learning how to maybe make that food or maybe buy healthier versions of that food, that can go a long way. And that can be the 1% that starts you on a healthier journey.
Absolutely. And I know, like, for my own life, sometimes you want change in other people, and sometimes you have to just, bite the bullet and kind of step it up and just be that. And then they'll see you and
Yeah.
notice and help change too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's important to be the example, because there's a quote by our guy, Sean Stevenson, who we're mutual friends with. In his book, Eat Smarter, he said that how did he say it? It's great to, it's great to make a healthy change, but what's even better is being that change and bringing it with you everywhere you go. So it's cool to make the changes in your home, but if you can live and be a representation of a healthy lifestyle and take that with you into your friend's home, into your family's home, and show them how you're living a healthy life, that's just going to help them. So, be the change, take it with you wherever you go.
Yeah, I was listening to Jay Ferrugio, and he was saying too, I mean, there's a lot of talk now, about alcohol and the impacts on that and just lowering it. But he was like, if your friend is trying to eat better, when you go out to dinner with them, eat better.
Yeah.
If you know that they're trying not to drink alcohol, like opt not to have that, right? So that they, feel seen and supported.
Yeah, no, that's so good. And we need more friends like that in our lives. We could all use a good friend like that is making the good choices with us. So yeah, I mean, alcohol is a big one, I think, for a lot of people. But I mean, how can you switch, maybe drinking? Because I want to say it's not necessarily the alcohol. The alcohol itself is a poison, but it's usually all the additives that come in the alcohol. So if you're used to drinking certain types of alcohol, mixed drinks with all the added sugars and random stuff in there, maybe scale it back and don't drink all that random stuff. Maybe get like a tequila with lime or something. It's literally just distilled, whatever alcohol with a splash of lime in there. That's a step up. But
Yeah.
then, some people might just want to cut it out cold turkey altogether.
Yeah, I haven't really drank in like 3 years, and it's been cool, but it's also seeing too, like, what is the pattern associated with drinking. I don't know if you follow Shalene Johnson at all, but
Mm-hmm.
she shares, and it's also just like trying to fit in. And she said something about when she stopped drinking alcohol, she really analyzed, the people that she would want to hang out with. Like if she
Mm-hmm.
felt like she needed alcohol to be with them, she would just be like, I can't, say no or whatever, and just
Yeah.
acknowledge that. But also internally, right? Like, what are we using alcohol for? Are we trying to be more confident, or what are we trying to
Yeah.
kind of mask up there?
Yeah.
But what are would you say your top few books that have changed your lives? I know you love to read, but like the top, I don't know, 3 to 5, I know it's hard, that have
In
really
any niche,
anything, doesn't matter.
man. The very first one, just because it was like the first one for me that really started it off, was Sleep Smarter by Sean Stevenson. We mentioned him a few times, but that was like the lowest hanging fruit for me, was changing my sleep quality. And when I changed my sleep quality and everything in my environment, that really helped me get good sleep. And we prioritize it, like I just mentioned, like putting our phones out in the kitchen, and we don't have technology in our bedroom other than our air doctor that's in our bedroom. Yeah, we don't. We prioritize our sleep. So that book, Sleep Smarter, was a great one. I read that in 2013 or 2014, and that one really helped. That's sleep. Let's see, nutrition. I would say Deep Nutrition by Dr. Kate Shanahan really impacted my life. Looking back at all the dozens, hundreds of books that I've read over the past decade, Deep Nutrition is the one that has stood the test of time for me, and is really, I mean, stood the test of time for a lot of people, but she does a great job at blending historical perspective and taking what cultures have done and are currently doing and blending that with modern science and all the peer-reviewed evidence. Cultures have been doing things, eating certain foods for the longest time, and they didn't have the peer-reviewed evidence that said why certain foods were good for you. Well, now we have peer-reviewed evidence, and blending that together is a beautiful perspective. So that book is a really awesome book that helped me to see more ancestral thinking, just getting closer to nature and applying the 9 tenets that I just talked about earlier. That's a good one. And then I also just had the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Bill Schindler, who wrote the book Eat Like a Human. Awesome book. And that really shifted my perspective in 2021 when I read his book. It really changed my perspective because he addresses the concept. Everybody's asking, what should we eat? What should we eat? Plants, animals, ultra processed foods? Well, he's taken a step back and said, hey, let's ask the question, how should we eat? How can you prepare your foods differently? You can eat the bread, but humans historically have prepared bread a certain way to make it better, health promoting. Whereas now the bread in the grocery store today is just, it's going to cause you to bloat, digestive issues, has the gluten in it. Well, if you can prepare your bread and make it sourdough, ferment it, it can be pretty much a healthier version of that food. It's not going to have gluten in it nearly as much. You're probably going to digest it better. So that's a great book that talks a lot about how should we eat. And those are probably the few books that have ultimately, looking back, have really impacted my life. Atomic Habits is also another one. Just, it's a #1 New York Times bestseller for a reason. And
That was really good.
Yeah, love that one.
I love it too, just because habits are everyday life, and he breaks it down in a way that it's totally doable for you to replace any habit. What is one piece of advice you would like to share with the audience before you let them know where to find you?
One piece of advice, man. Prioritize yourself. Put yourself first in every area of your life. You've heard the saying, put your mask on first in the airplane. And I think that is one of the most important things, because there's loving moms and dads out there listening that put their kids first, that put their spouses first, that put their family and friends first. But put yourself first. Fill your cup up first. That way you can pour from the overflow. And putting yourself first every day can just be the first 10 minutes. Or if you can't get that first 10 minutes, if something comes up with your kids, take that 10 minutes, do something for you. And that is probably the best piece of advice that I could give. And that could be going for a 5-10 minute walk. That could be what I said earlier, putting your phones out in the bedroom, because when you're making yourself better and putting yourself first, you become so much better of a person, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And then you're going to bring that with you everywhere you go.
So good. So good. Thanks, Craig. Where can people find you? Like, what are you doing? Do you have, I know you have a ton of courses and stuff. I don't know what you're offering right now, but.
Yeah. Instagram is where I'm most active, at Craig_McCloskey. Website is CraigMcCloskey.com. I'm also active with Ancestral Supplements. So we're there on Instagram and on our YouTube channel at Ancestral Wisdom Show. That's where you can mostly find me. But yeah, I'm just pretty active there, just putting out content as much as I can. And that's about it.
I love you. I love
I love you too.
I don't know why I said that. I would say I love your content. I love what you're doing. Thank you for being here. And I was going to say, I can't go on Facebook or Instagram without seeing like your Ancestral Supplement, like the sponsored stuff. Yeah. It's all over. So
yeah, we've been running a lot of content and hopefully trying to help people for the better.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you. I hope you have a great day, and I appreciate you being on here.
Thanks, Brogan.